On Ghana Tonight, we continue to stay the steam on the fight against illegal mining, asking if the John Dramani Mahama's government inspires confidence so far in the fight against Galamsey. Well, the president made a statement on it today during his speech to commemorate today, the May Day. But then you have civil society organizations also reacting to this. Stay with us. The future of the electricity company of Ghana is up for scrutiny tonight, as President John Dramani Mahama clarifies ECG will not be privatized. We tell you exactly what this really means in the scheme of things, especially with the president also acknowledging the debt, the mounting debt of ECG, over 68 billion cedis and counting, and what has to be done going forward. And we have some other issues as well we're going to be dealing with tonight. As always, you're an integral part of the conversation. Let's hear from you. The hashtag we're using is Ghana Tonight on Facebook and on X. Let's get talking. Well, let's settle for Ghana Briefs.
President John Mahama is assuring organized labor that public sector salaries will see improvements starting next year. Speaking at this year's May Day celebrations in Accra, the president admitted that the recent 10% salary increase was far from enough. He appealed to workers to support the creation of an independent emoluments commission, an initiative he says will help close the wide gap in public sector pay.
I know that morale in the workplace is more than just a matter of salary. It is about dignity, it is about fairness, it is about opportunity and trust. It is about the feeling that your labor is recognized and that your voice is valued and your future is secure. And that's why I'm committed not only to improving conditions of service, but also to restoring hope and confidence in the Ghanaian workforce.
The Civil and Local Government Staff Association, CLOGSAG, is calling on the Minister for Labour, Employment and Jobs to urgently convene a national tripartite meeting to address what it describes as the improper transfer of chief directors and CEOs of public institutions. Executive Secretary of CLOGSAG, Isaac Bampo Addo, made the call at a news conference to mark this year's May Day celebrations.
CLOGSAG is dissatisfied and dismayed at the tactics of dislodging and crippling of the civil service and the local government service through political means. CLOGSAG would wish to call on government to put measures to halt this practice of ignoring and disregarding existing tenets and procedures in the services. For CLOGSAG, we stand for a revitalized civil service to regain its past glory. The local government service should not be entangled with political interference that will stifle its progress.
A widespread power outage affected several parts of Ghana on Thursday afternoon following a system disturbance caused by damage to a major transmission line. According to a joint statement by the Ghana Grid Company Limited, GRIDCO, and the Electricity Company of Ghana, ECG, the incident occurred at approximately 1:42 p.m. when a tipper truck offloading stones at a private construction site accidentally lifted its bucket into a high-voltage transmission line near the Nkoko-Konongo corridor. As a result, electricity supply was disrupted in the western, central and northern regions, as well as parts of Accra. Children around the world face numerous health challenges, including the 6 killer diseases. However, with effective child health promotion strategies, many of these challenges can be overcome. Acting Director General of the Ghana Health Service, Professor Samuel Kaba Akoria, wants hospitals to prioritize initiatives aimed at promoting healthy lifestyles, particularly for children.
All district directories of health service, hospitals, polyclinics within the Greater Accra region have been sensitized and instructed to organize series of events and activities to mark the week at their levels in order to create more awareness on the package of health interventions that are available at our health facilities to promote healthy growth and development of the child.
The English Football Association has clarified that transgender women will not be able to compete in women's football in England from 1st June following a recent Supreme Court order. The English Football Association amended its rules on April 11, applying stricter eligibility criteria for transgender women to continue playing in women's football at all levels. However, following the UK Supreme Court's ruling on April 15 that the legal definition of a woman is based on biological sex, the FA has scrapped that policy and says only those born biologically female will be permitted to play.
Oh, there's more news on 3news.com. Make some time and visit 3news.com. This is Ghana Tonight. Now, we're just getting some information from the Ghana Police Service right now. And this is an update on the police investigation of a shooting incident at Nsawam near Nsawam. Now, the Eastern South Regional Police Command is investigating a shooting incident which occurred on the 29th of April. 2025 and resulted in the death of some 5 people at Nsawam near Akwanindobro. That's somewhere on the Nsawam Road. Now, the police crime scene team, from what we're gathering from this statement, which responded to the incident, found lifeless bodies of 5 male adults with gunshot wounds. Now, the team also recovered the following items from the scene: 1 Toyota Tacoma vehicle, 1 Toyota Tundra vehicle, 1 pump action gun with 17 live cartridges, 4 empty cartridges, 3 39mm empty shells, and then also 1 9mm empty shell, 5 heavy-duty motorbikes. Preliminary investigation suggests that there was a confrontation between 2 groups over sand winning at that particular location where the incident occurred. The bodies of the deceased have since been deposited at the police hospital morgue for preservation, identification and autopsy, while investigations continue to get the perpetrators arrested. So that's information from the Ghana Police Service. In fact, it's a statement that came through just a few minutes ago, and we had to put it out. So if you go on the police's Facebook page and the website, you find it. But coming up next year on Ghana Tonight, the new patriotic party, Thank You Tour, has got many party faithful talking, with some asking for the tour to be suspended. That's coming up next tonight. We hear from Dr. Arthur Kennedy. He's a member of the party, also a medical practitioner. Now, quite a number of these NPP founding members and other members of the party have been speaking about the Thank You Tour. The latest is that the chairman of the party, Stephen Ntim, has taken a break from the Thank You Tour. There's no indication as to whether it's going to continue without him, because most of these engagements that have taken place since the tour started, you have Dr. Mahmoud Obamia, the flag bearer of the party in the 2024 elections, and also Kennedy Japan and some party executives speaking or addressing the members of the party during these gatherings. And it's one of them that, we recall, Kennedy Japan also directly replied some members of the party about some issue that he wasn't too happy about. That was before he decided to withdraw from the Thank You Tour after one of his supporters was stabbed. Now, this is Kennedy Japan in that video talking about his decision to withdraw. But a number of the party members have been talking about this particular Thank You Tour. And if you recall, I'm going to go back there and do just a quick recall of some of the people who have been talking about this. Boachi Ejakum, who is one-time flag bearer hopeful of the party, issued a statement a few days ago expressing his view about this Thank You Tour. I'm going to put that on the screen right now. Essentially, he makes the point that, one, the Thank You Tour, this is the one that has to do with the chairman of the party, indeed, having to take a short break from the ongoing nationwide thank you tour to attend to some pressing matters. Essentially, he says he remains faithful and fully committed to the tour and will rejoin the team in due course. The party appreciates all members' continued support, enthusiasm, unwavering commitment, and cooperation. It goes on, and this is signed by Richard Ahiaba. Now, when you go to some other persons who have been talking about this as well, you have Boakye Jako, you see him there. This is a statement he issued, said the ongoing thank you tour, envisioned as a beacon of hope and a rallying point to reignite the spirit of our faithful and supporters, is unfortunately veering off course. What was intended to restore our party's shine and reconnect us with the grassroots is instead unraveling into bouts of discord, blame shifting, and internal strife. He says the regrettable turn of events threatens to inflict serious collateral damage on the very fabric of our party. More worryingly, it is steadily eroding the goodwill and trust we have worked so hard to cultivate among the Ghanaian people. In light of these unfortunate developments, he, Boakye Jako, is of the view that leadership should earnestly consider a swift and decisive decision on this thank you tour. It is time to apply the brakes and reassess the direction of the thank you tour. We must pull back from what is increasingly looking like an imminent coalition course and chart a path that upholds the unity, dignity, and forward-looking spirit of the tradition of the MPP. Carefully recalibrated approach, one that fosters genuine reconciliation, solidarity, and purposeful engagement, is urgently needed. Just let us seize this moment to renew our collective resolve and ensure that the mission of the thank you tour is accomplished in a manner worthy of our party's proud legacy. That's Boakye Chamantinye Jako, who issued a statement a few days ago on this same thank you tour that the chairman of the party has taken a break on, but then again also generated some conversation. Dr. Arthur Kennedy is also wading into this matter of the thank you tour. I want to hear from him exactly what his view is and whether he aligns with the thoughts and concerns of Boakye Chamantinye Jako, and also, like Sir Kojo Mpiani, have all been speaking about it, calling on the party to suspend this thank you tour. Dr. Arthur Kennedy, thank you for joining us on Ghana Tonight.
For inviting me. Good evening to your listeners and happy May Day.
And happy May Day to you too as well. And I know that you've been following the happenings within your party with respect to this thank you tour. Those who have called on the party to, as it were, reconsider, the likes of Boakye Chamantinye Jako, Kojo Mpiani, and then also others. In fact, Kennedy Japon, who was withdrawn from this thank you tour as well. What's your position on this? Do you align with the concerns of Boakye Chamantinye Jako that this thank you tour has to be put on hold, to pull the brakes and recalibrate?
Yes, I do. I actually think that the thank you tour was a little ill-conceived from the beginning. I acknowledge up front that this is not the first time a thank you tour is happening. It's happened a lot in the past, done by Kufuor, done by Dubois, done by Nana Akufo-Addo, and Dr. Bawumia is seeking to do the same. I think, though, that this one, for some reason, has been characterized by undue rancor, and it's been, as some of you have reported already, been characterized by exchange of fisticuffs and finally a stabbing. It doesn't seem as if it is doing our reputation any good. And I'm not saying here that it is necessarily the fault of Dr. Bawumia, but sometimes one cannot control circumstances, and it might be a good idea to pause from it. You just reported, and I didn't know that the national chairman has taken a break. Maybe the national chairman shouldn't take a break, the tour should take a break. And I also think that while we seemed a little obsessively focused on the national tour and what we are doing with the party, the nation has real emergencies that are going ignored. In addition to everything else, while hopefully we can put ourselves together to prepare for the next chance as government, we are also a responsible opposition party. We are the largest opposition party in the country, and there are a lot of things going on. In the judiciary, for example, the Chief Justice is under pressure and might be removed. I also think that the President, the Chief Justice own is a little, if one can argue with both sides, but the President is packing the Supreme Court, which is a bad idea. Third, it sounds as if that he's losing the stomach for the fight against Galamsey. It sounds like, despite the bright start of Oral, the President is developing cold feet about accountability. These are things that, as the major opposition party, is responsible and loyal to Ghana, we should vigorously engage, work with the President where possible, and oppose him with reasons where we think he's going off the rails. And I think, unfortunately, that our party is not paying enough attention to these urgent priorities. So I urge the leadership to consider that we should, in effect, work and chew our triapia at the same time by looking at both responsibilities.
I see. You make the point that this whole thank you tour was, in your view, ill-conceived right from the beginning. I mean, but if you listen to the objectives that were outlined by the party before the tour began, it was quite clear what they wanted to achieve: to go back to the people, say thank you to them even though the party lost, and then also take the opportunity to address some of the issues. For instance, some factors that may have led to the party's defeat. You still were not convinced that these were right reasons to go on this tour?
No, and that is precisely why I say it was ill-conceived. You know, the party has had problems with leadership bias, or at least perceptions of the same. So now we set up the Mike Okoye Committee to investigate the reasons why we lost an election. People wondered why that committee was composed the way it was. They finished their work, and it is not shared with the general membership of the party, which is reasonable sometimes. Maybe it's not everything that should be put out in public. But it is clear from the kind of things that Dr. Bawumia is saying on the drill that he is privy to the contents of the report, whilst other people who may ultimately and as of right contest for the leadership are not privy to the contents of the report. That is not fair. Secondly, the General Secretary of the party issued what do they call it, an edict or fatwa against saying anything that might excite disaffection, etc., etc., and invited Adwa Safo to disciplinary committee. And now here is the flag bearer of the party, Dr. Bawumia, in effect going after the former president, Nana Akufo-Addo, for reasons that party insiders look quite obvious. But if we are not trying to excite disaffection, it sounds like some of the things that Dr. Bawumia is saying and implying and indirectly attributing to the president would not engender goodwill in the party and will lead to rancorous debate. So that in itself appears to be undermining the stated purpose of the tour.
I see. But you talk about some of the things that have been said during this tour so far. What Dr. Bawumia essentially talking about some of the things that led to the party's defeat, fuel prices being increased just weeks or days before the election, and then some of the policies by the SWAL administration that he was vice president to Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo. You term that as an attack on Nana. Why is that?
Oh, of course. You know, we had an executive presidency, and executive power was vested in one person. So even though he artfully uses the royal we, etc., etc., the reality is that if you understand language, when the vice president says, "Yekase enye reshuffle," for 8 years, he means the president, if you understand that. And this is fueled by the knowledge in the party that the former president has made a decision and communicated the same to some members, that he intends to support another candidate. I mean, all those are issues that we can debate later about the appropriateness of supporting Bawumia and the tensions that occurred during the last primary and all that. But having said all that, I think Dr. Bawumia cannot eat his cake and have it. You cannot be touted by the likes of Osafo Maafo as the most influential and consequential vice president in our history. You were the economic guru who were going to rebuild our economy and take all the plaudits, and then when we finally lose an election, turn around and pretend you never had any influence. I think that that is wrong on two scores. It kind of portrays him unfairly or unfortunately as unprincipled, and it also portrays him as ungrateful to Nana Akufo-Addo, who has done so much for him. If Dr. Bawumia indeed disagreed with those policies, then he should have forcefully made the case in the inner councils of government. The General Secretary, Mr. Kudua, before he issued his edict, had gone around telling whoever will listen that he was virtually the only person who took on the president. Everybody else was quiet. So, for example, there were witnesses there. Did Dr. Bawumia ever speak in cabinet against the cathedral? Did he ever condemn corruption? I mean, did he ever raise his voice against what happened to Afoko and Kwabena Japan, etc., etc.? I mean, if at that time he didn't say anything, then it means that he did not give the president his best advice. And that is unfair. And if indeed all these major issues were done without regard to his opinion, then it begs the question, why did he stay there as a sympapeni and just enjoy his benefits while his judgment was ignored?
Well, but there are those who are with him will make the point that he made it quite clear. They say that he made it clear, for instance, that he did not support the e-levy even at the cabinet level. That's according to those who were there and speak for him as well. That even before the elections, when he was launching his bold solutions in February last year at the UPSA, he made it clear he was going to abolish e-levy, for instance, as well. That's not convincing enough?
No, but let's even concede the e-levy, which I doubt. What did he say about what happened to Afoko and Kwabena Japan that foundationally destroyed the party? What did he say on record against corruption? What did he say on the record against impunity? Which one of those major deals that tarnish our image did he condemn? When did he raise his voice against nurses and teachers who were not being paid? I am just saying that there is no evidence that he did that.
Then you mentioned, for instance, about what the way forward, in your view, should be like. There are those who hold the position that he is not necessarily running away from the factors or what his contribution was to the defeat of the party in the 2024 elections. Do you get that sense as well, that he is maybe blaming everything else but him, as some persons within the party have suggested?
Yeah, he's blaming the former president. It's very clear that that is what he's doing. And it looks even worse because it appears that this change of heart and endorsement of candor on the part of the former vice president and running mate is based on his knowledge that finally his mentor has decided that he will not support him anymore. So, in effect, if Nana Addo was still in his camp, he would happily still be a defender of Nana Akufo-Addo. And I think that we should honestly debate the record of Nana Akufo-Addo. And I indeed agree that he was the major reason why our government was as bad as it was. But there were a lot of people who aided and abetted his malfeasance, including the most consequential vice president in our history, according to their own accountant. And you can't have it both ways. You can't sit there for 8 years as vice president and enjoy all the privileges, and then as soon as you realize that the man has changed his mind, all of a sudden discover all his faults. I mean, we would have done well to hear these faults. And of course, if you are in the government and time after time, you are the principal advice is ignored. The example is clearly there. Odinga resigned as vice president of Kenya because he disagreed with the direction of the country. After all, when you join a ticket, you do not hand over your conscience. You're still accountable for your decisions.
Are you saying on record that Nana Addo Akufo-Addo is not supporting Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia anymore should he decide to contest the flag bearership in 2028?
Yes, I am.
You know that for sure?
Yes, I do.
How did you get to know this?
I can't tell you that, but if it is not correct, whoever is in the know can correct me, and as events unfold, we'll see whether what I have just told you is true or not.
I see. And how you got to know? Who told you? Did the person give reasons why Nana Addo has changed his mind in supporting Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia?
Out of respect to the former president, I will let him lay out his reasoning himself when he's ready.
But you still stand by that position that it is based on what you know, Nana Akufo-Addo is not supporting Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia if he should contest as flag bearer ahead of the 2028 elections?
That is correct.
I see. But then also, going forward, should the party continue with this tour or pull the brakes, as some have suggested?
I will pull the brakes for a number of reasons, and I want to make it clear that I'm not saying that all these things that are happening are necessarily the fault of Dr. Bawumia. Sometimes bad things happen in spite of your best efforts. I think his idea that he wanted to invite his former adversaries to join him on a thank you tour is a noble idea, but it of course underlines one of the inconsistencies in the party. Once an election is over, the party reverts to the leadership of the national chairman. So if something like this is being done, it should be done under the aegis of the national chairman. So when Dr. Bawumia's spokesperson said, oh, he was generous enough to invite his former competitors, he in effect is acknowledging that the former vice president is planning and executing the thank you tour instead of the party.
And so with the national chairman taking a break, it should, from your view, effectively give an opportunity for the party to also consider these divergent views about the thank you tour and recalibrate?
They should, and I take them at their word, both Dr. Bawumia and the party leadership, that this was supposed to foster unity and goodwill, and it sounds like that is not happening. And if there is exchange of blows and even a stabbing, it really doesn't portend well for a primary. That will be more heated, and it just suggests that maybe we have more work to do behind the scenes before we start taking things public. But more to the point, I want to very respectfully urge my party members not to forget about Ghana while we lick our wounds. A lot of consequential things are happening, and I urge us to re-engage on Galamsey, to re-engage on accountability, to re-engage even on the constitutional reform process that will bear on how the Chief Justice is being removed and how the President is trying to pack the Supreme Court. If we do not take care and we forget too much about Ghana, there might not be a Ghana to lead by the time we are ready to re-engage.
I see. But the likes of Kenneth Japong have called for at least some act of goodwill on the part of the party to bring in some persons who have left the party. You mentioned Paul Afoko, for instance, and all he's been through. And then also, he even mentions Alan Chamanting and others who have left the party. Is it a call or an appeal that you support? And do you see the leadership of the party taking this up for consideration?
Yeah, I fully support that. I actually want to go a step further. there are some of them who don't need amnesties. When we say amnesty, it presupposes that the person did something wrong. I think we owe Afoko and Kwamna Japan an apology for the way we viciously and undemocratically took away the mandate they had won fair and square. So we need to do more than just give them amnesties as if they did something wrong. If we are principled and open-minded and generous, we should acknowledge that we did them some wrong. And not only that, I always support reconciliation and bringing people into the party, because we know that we cannot win 2028 even without some NDC help. We need NDC members, and 25% of those who voted for John Mahama were MPP people who went into the ballot box according to exit polling and voted for John Mahama. So reconciliation and reaching out and broadening our base should always be a top priority of the party.
And the next part of my question is whether you think the current crop of leadership would consider this particular appeal that you support, and even mentioning other names, apart from what Kenny Japan mentioned, other names who could be reached out to that really to appeal to them to come back. Do you see the leadership doing that?
It is possible for them to do that, and if they don't do that, it will be unwise and not in the interest of the party.
Why do you hold the view that the party should apologize to Paul Afoko and Kwabena Japan?
Because we removed them on trumped-up charges. Everybody knows that people decided that they might be sympathetic to Alan Martin and decided that because of that they will remove them. I believe, and I stated it then, I am not one of those people who only looks at the political wins and state my opinion. I thought that both the mandates of Afoko and Kwabena Japan on one hand and the mandate of Nana Akufo-Addo were legitimate mandates, and that as Democrats we should respect both mandates. It is unfortunate that we didn't respect the mandate of Afoko and Kwabena Japan. And I think that if we are the mature, generous, principled party that we hold to be, the best thing to do is to apologize to them and acknowledge that we did them wrong.
Dr. Arthur Kennedy, I do appreciate your time on this show tonight, and I know that as the days go by, we'll be engaging some more. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Dr. Arthur Kennedy is a member of the New Patriotic Party, one-time flag bearer hopeful. He's a medical practitioner. He's a member of the NPP. This is Ghana Tonight. Coming up next, the future of the Electricity Company of Ghana is up for scrutiny and discussion tonight as President John Dramani Mahama clarifies ECG will not be privatized, but he's mulling some options. We'll tell you exactly what they are, because earlier today, during his address to commemorate this day, the May Day, President John Dramani Mahama pledged that ECG will not be privatized. But he went ahead to give some more detail of the current state of affairs with the ECG and what other options could be considered. Take a look.
ECG has been brought to its knees by a culture of poor governance over the last 8 years, with a debt of 68 billion Ghana cedis and rising. If we do not do something drastic, our whole power sector will collapse. We can only bring down power tariffs if we improve efficiency in the distribution of power. Let me assure you, that is not my intention to privatize the ECG as an institution. Our attention is more a public-private collaboration to inject efficiency into our downstream electricity distribution system.
Well, so that's the president there, and Ben Boache is the executive director of the Africa Center for Energy Policy, ASAP. Ben, I appreciate your time, and I know you've watched this position as espoused by the president earlier today. He does not intend selling off ECG, but he's mulling the idea of a private sector participation of a sort. But this is a path that we have been on before. We are not new to it. What should be the pitfalls that should be paid attention to and avoided?
No, I think it's a bold attempt to actually stay his convictions and commitment to the energy sector. You recall that it was under his leadership that the whole private sector participation was initiated from 2014. And just when it was about crystallizing in 2016, he lost power. And then the next government failed to actually implement that program successfully. And it was essentially to fix the inefficiencies in the energy sector as we have known it and talked about for years, which is bleeding the national budget billions of dollars, every year. And the way to deal with it is to insulate the inefficiencies, the sector from the inefficiencies, and ensure that power generated can go through the value chain and translate into revenues that pays everybody rather than the budget of Ghana. So I think that commitment alone is commendable, and I think the assurance he was given was that the jobs will be kept, all interest will be upheld, but to improve efficiency, the government needs to allow the private sector to come in and do the job, and we are fully in support, and it's something we have advocated for years. I was also part of the committee that actually reviewed the options and recommended the options that were approved by cabinet. So on that score, I don't see how we can, disagree with what the president was saying. What we need to understand is that at no point was an outright sale on the table. It was always a point of bringing in efficiency, through a concession, so that the private sector can invest, improve efficiency, and manage the utility well, while the asset remains that of the state. So that is, of course, what cabinet has approved, and we're hoping that it will be implemented to the latter, in the coming months and years.
But then again, in the president, in giving that assurance that ECG will not be sold off, also acknowledges that 68 billion cedis debt and still counting is on the books of ECG, which is our debt essentially. We've got to find ways of paying for it, even though we still have to pay for the debt in many ways. When we go to the pumps to buy fuel, we're essentially paying part of it. But will the private sector participation, based on what you have just pointed out, address the culture of poor governance that the president talks about that has contributed to this debt of over 68 billion that we're faced with now?
I think it's really because, for me, our analysis shows that because this whole thing is government, and therefore people do not own the responsibility to ensure that there's efficiency. I mean, we've been talking about the port saga, procurement abuse that costs ECG billions. And it's essentially because it's government owned. No private entity would do the kind of hemorrhage, financial abuse that has happened in ECG in the past years. So we need that efficiency to come into the operations of ECG and absorb the budget of that. So on that score, I think that is really what this whole thing is trying to achieve, to bring in that efficiency. If we get to a point where we think government agencies, i.e. the ECG itself, will be able to manage the utility, we can always revert to it. But at this point, keeping a holding company that only makes sure that the private sector maintains the asset and invests in the asset will be the starting point, whilst we improve efficiency in the sector and make sure that the consumer ultimately is protected. Because all these inefficiencies are paid by the consumer somewhat through the tariff and also through taxes, because your taxes are essentially being used to subsidize the energy sector. All right. When you pay at the pump to buy petrol or diesel, close to a cedi is actually going to manage the energy sector inefficiencies. And that hasn't even been enough. We still have to get a lot more revenue from other sources to augment that. And that is still not enough. We have outstanding debt, and it's accumulating and growing every single day. We need to fix that. And any objective Ghanaian would appreciate that it doesn't make sense for Ghana to pick $2 billion out of its pocket to subsidize the energy sector in any kind of form. You can imagine what that can do in the agriculture sector, in the education sector, in the health sector. If we invested $500 million in a year to even grow rice or tomatoes, I'm sure we will not be importing all those commodities onto our shores. But every single year, we're spending that much money to subsidize the electricity sector.
And a big concern, Ben. And even before we get into the other options that the president is mulling, and in fact, the energy minister just about a month ago put out some options of how the private sector participation in ECG is going to be like going forward. And this is it. There are three options that we got to know based on the energy ministry's own proposals that they got from a committee that was established. One is the entity concession approach. The detail we got from the first option of the entity concession approach is that government would grant a private company the exclusive right to operate, maintain, and invest in the entire electricity distribution network within a defined geographical area for a specific period, say between 20 to 30 years. This approach was adopted in the botched PDS saga. So there's some consideration for the entire PDS engagement. And Ben, that's what you talk about. Because yes, some of you lauded the PDS engagement until we saw all of how some of the other aspects of that engagement also played out with the lack of transparency and the corruption that was identified in there that eventually led to it being botched. Now, the first option for this private sector participation would then consider the good aspect of this PDS engagement. The second one is a multiple lease approach, which according to the details of the Energy Ministry, electricity distribution network is going to be geographically or functionally divided into several distinct areas or segments. The rights to operate and manage each of these segments are then leased out to different private sector companies. Each company will be responsible for the distribution business within the assigned area. Ownership of the assets will remain with the government. That's the second option. The third one is a service franchise approach. According to the detail that we have, the private sector's involvement is going to be focused on the last mile of electricity distribution. That's the low voltage network directly serving residential and small commercial customers. The private sector company will then operate and maintain this part of the network, including meter reading, billing, collection, and customer service. Now, the high and medium voltage networks might remain under the state control or a different form of private sector arrangement. So these are the three options. And Ben, you hear the president reference this third option is what you can find with enclave power that provides power for the free zones enclave. Enclave power being giving the right to bill and also, as it were, collect on their own. Now, is it a model from where you sit that can be replicated in the ECG situation as we're faced with now?
I think it's essentially the kind of efficiency we're looking at, where you sell power, you're able to recover over 98% of the revenues. That is remarkable. And we need that level of efficiency in ECG, which we've never been close to, not just at the collection, but also expenditures. So with the private sector, we should be able to achieve that. But that also requires some significant monitoring from all stakeholders to make sure that we're not abused in any way. And we saw a glimpse of it even when the PDS came. With all these problems, we saw a huge jump in revenue collection in a short period of time. We saw efficiency in the way staff behaved, responding to power cuts, responding to faults, metering issues. We saw that efficiency introduced into ECG, and they suddenly slipped back as soon as the PDS transaction fell on the rocks. So we have the track record. We have seen it happening, and we can ensure that the same scenarios play out with the private sector participation.
Well, I do appreciate your thoughts. Ben Boachi, Executive of the Africa Center for Energy Policy, ACEP, there. We're going to go for the script break. When we're back, we'll stay with us here on Ghana Tonight, because the Finance Minister, Dr. Kasiel Atoforsen, is cautioning against Ghana Revenue Authority officials staying at one revenue post for too long. We'll tell you why. Stay with us. Against officers being on revenue collection post for too long. This is what the Minister for Finance, Dr. Kasiel Atoforsen, said. Take a look.
there is an urgent need to amend aspect of the GRA human resource management policy to mandate the rotation of officers after 2 years in a given position. Let me make this point once again, that this is a strategic measure aimed to reduce the risk of collusion, broaden professional experience, and ultimately strengthen staff development and organizational performance. I cannot see why one person should be in one revenue point for 6-8 years. Please, immediately after this meeting, the first thing you should do is to call for a board meeting as early as next week to revise that manual. And I do not believe that one person should be at one post for more than 2 years. This bleeds collusion. And so you need to immediately look at that and then unwind it. If a place is bad, so they call it, let it be bad for everyone. If the place is good, let it be good for everyone. And let everybody have the benefit to experience what is good and what is bad, in the words of staff. And I believe that is the way to grow people. And so no one should be made to stay in one position for more than 2 years in a row, collecting revenue for the Republic. I do not.
Well, quite clear, the finance minister he doesn't support that bit. You've had revenue officers stay in what post or location for 8 years. He says that doesn't work for him. Professor Lord Mensah is an economist and the senior lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School. Prof, appreciate your time. Is this proposal one that will be far-reaching in, as it were, addressing the collusion and corruption in the revenue collection system?
Yeah, I think he's looking at it from possibly looking at when someone has spent more time at a particular place and then colluding with revenue sources to end up, being corrupt. Because at the end of the day, if you're supposed to pay, for example, 100 cedis to the government, and then he says, pay me, 50 cedis, and then, the 50 cedis goes to his pocket without accounting to the government as a result of familiarity with the people. I think he has a way of, building up into revenue, shortage. And I believe that, the more you have, revenue collection workers staying at a particular place for long, the more likely they can collude with, those who are supposed to pay their taxes and other things, levies and all those, that will end up, shortening the revenue that at the national level we collect. So it makes sense for him to say that. But I think with the current structure, which, if the structure is so rigid that it will be difficult to move, workers around, then probably they may need, reorientation, and it's not going to be an instant thing. And I believe that is why he charged, the board to relook at how, workers can be trained so that if they are moved to, another place, they will not find themselves, wanting. So it's a good thing, one way or the other. He's, holding up the public purse, and he wants to ensure that what belongs to the state comes to the state. And probably that's why, he's suggesting that to the board. And I believe that it is, doable. One way or the other, it will enhance efficiency, reduce risk of, possible losses. And then also to the workers themselves, there's a benefit to it because, they will tend to develop, when they move around different structures within the revenue collection agency. So there is, something good to it. And it will benefit the nation, benefit all of us. After all, if the country is able to raise the necessary revenue that is required of it, the amenities that is supposed to provide for us, we all enjoy it. If we get good roads, we all enjoy it. Good health facility, we all going to enjoy it. At the end of the day, if our kids are going to good schools that are provided by the government, we'll end up, benefiting from it. So it's a good call, and I hope the board will take it in good faith and act on it.
And beyond that, the board has been charged to put measures in place to increase domestic revenue. We've seen tax to GDP over time, not in a progressive path, at least based on the last 10 years analysis that we're going to show in a bit. We've heard consistently the attempt to expand the tax net, identify the taxable population that is not paying taxes. But we've seen the challenge that previous administrations have faced with expanding the tax net, or their objective to expand the tax net. What do you expect to be done differently this time around to effectively achieve this objective?
Yeah, so if you're looking at increasing revenue in the current, structure that we have as a country, obviously you may have to do some investment. And, if the informal sector, let me put it that way, it's quite difficult to identify them. And looking at the structures that we have, I think the previous administration did something good, which the current administration can leverage on it when it comes to, the national identification card, and then also providing some kind of incentives, for people to, be responsible in paying their, revenue, so in paying their taxes. Because if at the end of the day, the person is coming to pay and you're able to provide maybe incentives like having a credit or having access to certain health facilities free of charge, which is government facilities free of charge. If at the end of the day you pay and then you can enjoy some social facilities provided by the government, I think this will motivate, people to pay. So it has to do with how they can package, the tax administration, and then also ensure that, taxes get to the doorstep of the people. The people shouldn't find it difficult to, access, government facility to pay their taxes. Where I find myself now, there are some revenues that and that is straight on your phone. It's an app that is connected to the telephone network. At the end of the day, if you have to pay your tax, it's just a matter of going in there and then pay what is necessary. So, for instance, if you want to renew your license, or if you pass a traffic that the state charges you, you pay it through your app and directly it's deducted from your bank account. And the GRA can liaise with the banks to do that, because now we can all be identified with our phone numbers and then with our national identification card. So the structures are there. It's a matter of being innovative and then connecting them to ensure that the right revenues are collected, to make sure that the state benefit.
And I do appreciate your thoughts on this. Professor Lord Mensah is a senior lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School, an economist as well. And you talk about ways of identifying this taxable population, because we have a largely informal economy. And then also, if we're going to increase the tax to GDP threshold, it should not necessarily result in more taxes for those who are already paying, or burdening the taxable population now, or the people who are paying taxes. Over time, we've seen the tax to GDP not follow an ascending, at least, line of analysis right from 2015 to 2024. There was an objective to increase it to 18%, at least, have taxes contribute about 18% to the GDP. The gross domestic product is total price of the total goods and services that produced over a certain period in this country, normally 1 year. Now we're looking at it, taking into consideration that objective of expanding the tax net. What are the difficulties ahead? This is it. In 2015, tax to GDP was just a little over 12%. Then there was that objective to have it increased. This talk of expanding the tax net is not one that we're new to. Every budget since at least 2016 has had it in there. 12.1 went down in 2016. Fast forward to 2020, which happens to be the lowest for obvious reasons, because of the impact of COVID-19, especially on businesses. A number of businesses closed down, workers also laid off, a number of people lost their jobs, government machinery almost grinding to a halt because of the impact of COVID. So you can understand why that is probably an outlier in the bar graph that we're showing you. In 2021, there was a 1 percentage point increase of the tax revenue contribution to GDP. And that has been the rise until 2024, when we saw a reduction to 13.6%. Now, as to whether that objective of 18% is going to be achieved is one that many economists who have made proposals, including what you just heard Professor Lord Mensah talk about going forward. How that is going to be done, it is the sole responsibility of this new board of the Ghana Revenue Authority, also considering these proposals from other like-minded persons talking about this. And this is one that will stay the steam on in the coming days. And so make a date with us here on TV3 and also on Monday on Business Focus with Michael Obodu. On behalf of the rest of the team, I want to say thank you so much for staying with us here on Ghana Tonight. Join us same time tomorrow for another conversation. My name is Alfred Ocansey. Have a good night.
Ghana Tonight is brought to you by
Flamingo Paint, superior durability.